begin. I'm Lainey.
And I'm Laura Beth.
And we are Steel Magnolias.
Two sisters who love family, traditions, and all things Southern.
We've got plenty of room at our table, so pull up a chair.
Hey, Lainey.
Hi, Laura Beth.
Well, everybody survived 4th of July weekend, I suppose. Probably some grogginess coming back to the work week from late nights and cookouts and heat and all that.
Trying to keep their dogs calm. I always feel so sorry for dogs.
I know. And it starts earlier and earlier each year. Like, my dog was terrified.
We had a lot the night before.
Yeah.
Right.
Practicing, I guess, is what's happening. Are people excited and they're just already out there shooting? I don't know. But it reminded me that, I looked up to see, like, what are some patriotic songs that people have been listening to this weekend.
Yeah.
And I wasn't very surprised to find that God Bless the USA by Lee Greenwood is the number one song in every patriotic playlist. It's downloaded like 25 times more than it normally is.
On 4th of July?
Yeah.
That's awesome. It is a great song.
It is. Everybody thinks it's called Proud to be American. Proud to be an American. But it's actually called God Bless the USA.
Okay.
For any of you trivia lovers out there. Lee Greenwood actually lives here in Franklin.
He does.
And I've seen him on a couple of occasions, but one that was like the most patriotic of all.
I love this story.
I had jury duty.
Yep.
And I was already feeling patriotic in showing up to the courthouse.
Just how our judicial system works.
Yes. And this wasn't an actual case I was being called for. This was everyone that had jury duty at some point that year. You were getting assigned the potential week for that year that you would be called. So everybody's packed into this old downtown Franklin courthouse room, and they're going alphabetical. So, of course, I was towards the end. And people are on their phones and reading books and quieting babies, and it was hot, and it was just kind of a, I don't know, cluster. But I just happened to be paying attention enough to hear Greenwood, Lee Greenwood. And there it was. He stood up, and I mean, I thought we should all just
bust into song,
stand up and put our hands over our hearts and break out in song with him. It was precious.
And I'm impressed he was there.
He was there. He showed up and got his assigned date. Now, I don't know if he got chosen for a later jury.
You actually did, didn't you?
No, I went and showed up, and they cut me.
Okay.
I was so disappointed. I wanted to do it so bad.
That's what's happened to me before.
I'm probably far too conservative. They probably asked me like 2 questions, and they're like, "She doesn't bend." Okay. No, I don't know. I don't know what all the parameters are that a lawyer thinks through. I know it's case by case, but anyway. So that's Lee Greenwood to me, and he just symbolizes the 4th. And I'm sure there's been great patriotic songs played in your home or in your community this weekend.
While you watched your fireworks show.
Yeah, we're going to talk about today a music genre that I also sort of associate with the 4th of July, because you hear this played in a lot of summer festivals, outdoor events. I don't know, it just lends well to being outside in the heat, and that makes sense because it was created outside in the heat. So today we're talking about the Delta Blues.
Yeah.
And, you know, this is one that we really felt was critical to include in Southern culture.
That's right.
It's representative, clearly, of the South and
hardship.
Yeah. So we're going to talk specifically about an area called Clarksdale, Mississippi today. But first, let's just talk about kind of what the Delta Blues is.
Okay. Well, the Delta Blues is one of the earliest known styles of blues music. There's many different styles, but this originated in the Mississippi Delta, which stretches from Memphis, Tennessee on the north side to Vicksburg, Mississippi in the south, and from Helena, Arkansas in the west to the Yazoo River in the east. The Mississippi Delta is famous for very fertile soil, but also for great poverty.
Yep, that's for sure.
Do you want me to kind of go into just the Delta blues tradition?
Yeah, do it, and then I'll jump in after you're done with that and talk a little bit about Clarksdale.
Okay. So the traditional blues songs were handed down by word of mouth from one performer to another, and artists would often add new lyrics to an old song and make it their own. The guitar and the harmonica were the primary tools of the Delta bluesmen, mostly because of the ease of carrying them around.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Many of the musicians of the early blues era were sharecroppers or worked on many of the plantations that dotted that Mississippi Delta. Excuse me. The Delta blues are typically identified by the music's highly rhythmic structure, sometimes featuring clashing rhythms accompanied by strong vocals. Although the lyrics of Delta blues are often simple with repeated lines, a trademark of the style, they also tend to be highly personal and reflective of the hard life of the African American farmer in the South.
Yeah, there's like a particular intensity that I feel like is brought through like projective lyrics.
Yeah.
In the Delta blues, and anyway, sorry, I just kind of want to
I mean,
I think of that.
There's often a real cry of loneliness.
Yeah, it's like coming from the belly.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean,
Absolutely.
It's like, yeah.
I even think almost like lack of love. I don't know if that's too harsh, but a lot of it has to do with loneliness and just hardship.
Yeah.
And the true origins of the blues are pretty dusty. I mean, we don't know exactly how all of this was birthed, but you can just tell it is birthed out of hardship.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
W.C. Handy is said to have discovered it in a Mississippi train station in the early 1900s via a traveler pressing his knife into guitar strings.
That's crazy. Like, is he just... I just think of somebody... They're literally sitting there bored, hot, waiting on a train.
Yeah.
Like,
and
why were they digging a knife into guitar strings? It's like a disturbed teenager or something, you know?
It may
like,
have been, just like... Actually, that very thing.
Yeah.
That W.C. Handy actually later became one of the first to publish sheet music for the blues.
Oh,
for
cool.
the Delta blues. But its roots extend deeper to 19th century Southern plantations, like I said. Kind of those folk songs and spiritual songs. There's even great African spiritual gospel songs that were birthed out of some of those sharecroppers as well.
Yeah.
But the Delta blues, kind of went on to also... influence other forms of the blues. There's
that's true.
Chicago blues, Detroit blues.
Yes,
some different directional.
I think most people would just think the blues is the blues, but people that really know the blues know
the difference.
There's these subgenres, and so we're really kind of talking about the most southern, and that's why we're calling it the Delta blues and not just calling it the blues.
The blues, that's right. Gosh, there's so many names that we could mention. I mean, if you want to dive into...
Well, let me tell a little bit about Clarksdale first.
While we're
there's
focusing
a lot
on
of
that.
specific players that came from Clarksdale. Clarksdale's about 4.5 hours from Nashville.
Okay.
I looked that up. You'd head west to Memphis and then just south into Mississippi. And it's northern Mississippi, Clarksdale is. But Clarksdale's been the center for blues culture since about the 1920s. And the location is why. The location was a transportation hub where Highways 61 and 49 connect.
Okay.
And that was where the Illinois Central and other railroads maintained like a depot and passenger terminals. And that's where a Greyhound bus company built a station. And so it made Clarksdale.
Isn't it funny how transportation
we forget
it's so integral.
We really do forget how important something like having a bus or a train stop in your town
makes it a hub.
It literally put you on the map.
That's right.
Nobody knew about you before then. I guess that's where that saying comes from. But so that brought in passengers. That if they had money to travel, they might have money to spend on entertainment.
Okay.
So that economic boom that Clarksdale experienced created audiences with money to spend on entertainment, and the blues flourished in the city. So I'll talk I'm going to touch on a few of the names. Some of these are recognizable, and I think we have I'm going to talk a little bit about some of these guys, but these are legendary musical artists that were born and raised in and around Clarksdale. Okay. So we're kind of talking, we'll give it maybe an hour, 1 hour, 1.5 hour radius around Clarksdale. Muddy Waters, John Lee Hooker, Son House, Ike Turner. Mm-hmm. Totally forgot
Clarksdale,
about him. Yeah. Jackie Brenston, Sam Cooke, Junior Parker.
Sam Cooke.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, these are big.
W.C. Handy, and then B.B. King was from about an hour, we said.
Indianola, is that how you say it?
Indianola, Mississippi. He was born in the mid-20s. So, I mean, today, historic blues culture is preserved for visitors while contemporary musicians carry on the Great Delta Blues tradition. But it's just wild to think of such a small town to us right now carrying all these people. But at that time, like we just said, it was a transportation hub, so it wasn't such a, off-the-grid sort of spot. It might feel like an off-the-grid location to us now, but at that time, there were people coming through regularly.
Well, time-wise, I think this is kind of an interesting thing I came across. The Delta Blues enjoyed a brief commercial run during the 1920s, but came to an abrupt end when the Depression derailed many artists' opportunities to record. So there's just no money.
Recording's big, yeah.
We have no money to record. Robert Johnson, who recorded during the 1930s, is widely considered to be the last of the original Delta blues artists. Mississippi Delta blues artists would prove to be a major influence on the British blues rock boom of the 1960s. I thought that was interesting, too, especially on the Rolling Stones and Eric Clapton, including his bands, the Yardbirds and the Cream. So, it influenced many directions.
Yeah.
But poverty was always an issue in this for a lot of these artists.
Yeah. And
to even do gigs or have recording money or anything.
Well, and when you think about gigs, those were like happenstance. I mean, it's not like a gig in a blues bar like you would see today. A gig was happenstance at a train station. Or a juke joint.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you know what a juke joint is?
Well, I've heard that terminology.
It's just an informal roadside tavern.
Okay.
But I like saying it here because
it fits, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It totally fits.
But, a gig could have been on a street corner.
Yeah.
Or at a plantation. I mean, those are your gigs. Like, it's not...
There's not a formal ticketed...
Right. You got to remember,
cover
if
charge.
There's no recordings, these gigs are also very informal. So...
well, do you want me to talk about some of the sites in Clarksdale if somebody wants to make a trip and hit some of these places?
It's not far from Nashville.
It's not.
Yeah.
Especially if you were to do both Clarksdale and that Indianola, which I'll talk about that in a second. But some of these, just like we're talking about, this is birthed out of just modest, not formal recording studios and things like that. So some of that even shows up in some of these places in Clarksdale that are kind of considered significant. The W.C. Handy house lot. It once his house once stood at this site in Clarksdale from 1903 to 1905, and it was during these formative years that he collected many blues songs. So it sounds like that's not even there anymore.
Yeah.
But people still want to see, like, the land where it happens.
I know. Aren't we funny about that kind of stuff?
So funny.
I just need to be on property.
There's a Delta Blues Museum there in Clarksdale, Mississippi.
Which I've heard is great.
I bet it is great.
A neighbor that is really into the blues.
Yeah, he was telling us that it's a really good museum. It was founded in 1979, houses a wide collection of artifacts from influential blues artists, including B.B. King, Sonny Boy Williamson, Bessie Smith, Muddy Waters, and others. It's located in the historic Clarksdale Freight Depot on Blues Alley. Gotta love that.
That's so fun.
Blues Alley Lane. The museum's mission is to create a welcoming space for visitors to explore the history and heritage of the blues, and often features blues workshops by local artists. So it's open Monday through Saturday from 9 to 5, and the general admission is $10.
That's cheap. They actually also have the remains of the cabin from the farm was called Stovall Farms, where Muddy Waters lived during the days of his sharecropping.
Wow.
And
so they've moved that.
They've moved it
to this museum.
And so you can actually see it there at the museum. Yeah.
And then I thought this was interesting. Right next door to the Delta Blues Museum is a club called Ground Zero Blues Club.
Okay, I didn't know that.
And the name comes from Clarksdale, Mississippi, has long been described as ground zero for the blues.
Oh, yeah.
So it all started here, so that's why the name, hence the name. But this blues club was started in 2001, and it's owned by a local attorney and businessman, Bill Luckett, as well as Academy Award-winning actor and Mississippi Delta resident, Morgan Freeman.
What?
As well as a couple of other businessmen there in the area. So that's a place for anyone that's looking for authentic Delta blues to kind of experience that. Their mission is to showcase the best of today's Delta blues musicians.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
If you want to make a trip down to Clarksdale, that's a must. Is the museum and then hitting that club next door.
Music. Yeah.
And it even has down-home menu as well with
fun.
Slow cooked pork barbecue,
of
crispy
course.
fried catfish, which is really popular.
Yeah.
There as well.
And if you're going anytime this time of year, prepare for heat and mosquitoes.
That's right.
So maybe make this a fall trip.
That's a good idea, Barbette.
Like you're hearing about it now, but just go ahead and put this off until fall for sure.
There's a place called the Riverside Hotel on Sunflower Avenue in Clarksdale. Apparently this is a place where Bessie Smith died after an auto accident.
One of the only female vocalists in this genre and time that we're talking about.
So, true pioneer.
Yeah.
And that hotel has also hosted Sonny Boyle Williamson, Ike Turner, Robert Nighthawk. So that's another place. And then there's a crossroads, which I just think is interesting, of that Highway 61 and 49 that's called the Devil's Crossroads. I don't know that there's anything necessarily to see, but it's considered an important landmark in the Delta landscape and is referenced in many songs, including Robert Johnson's Crossroad Blues. A lot of people want to see the Devil's Crossroads there in Clarksdale. So that's just a few places.
That's cool.
And then if you wanted to trek down another hour and 15 minutes south to that Indianola, that's where the B.B. King Museum.
Okay, so they actually have a museum down there. I didn't realize that. Okay. Yeah, I don't know, I'm just guessing. I would guess if any of these names that we're mentioning, people probably know B.B. King.
B.B. King.
The most.
That's a big name. I would think people would know the name Muddy Waters, too, but I don't know.
I think. You just never know, though. B.B. King just died a few years ago, though. I mean, he lived till 2015.
Yeah.
So even for that reason, people may.
And he's had enough renown that he has, like, nightclubs in his name.
True.
In some different cities, and so that causes you to know his name as well.
And he does a lot of, or did a lot of collaborations. So, for instance, you may not know B.B. King until you heard him doing a collaboration with Eric Clapton.
Yeah.
Or U2, or John Mayer.
Oh, my God.
And on and on and on. He's done a lot of collaborations.
That's cool.
And then I feel like there's so many artists that claim influence, from this Delta blues. I read that Jack White of the White Stripes, I've heard him talk about Delta blues was really influential. Bonnie Raitt.
Okay.
She claims Delta blues. John Mayer, Beck, Kebmo, all of those.
Okay, now this is interesting because I like all those artists. So I'm like, okay, thank God for the Delta blues, because if that's been so influential on so many of these great guitarists.
I know.
In particular.
Yeah. On rock.
Yeah.
Like, all of those guys are considered rock, so it's just funny that, I mean, I don't know, I guess you could consider some of those more bluesy, folkish.
Yeah.
But, I mean, somebody as straight up as U2 and John Mayer.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, like...
Yeah, you definitely hear it in Eric Clapton.
Yes.
But, yeah, to know that this influence has affected so many that we love.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, speaking of influence, if you haven't heard the name Muddy Waters, his actual name was McKinley Morganfield.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. So, I don't know when and where Muddy Waters became his stage name or his nickname, but he was actually McKinley Morganfield, and he was, by the age of 17, already dabbling around with the guitar and harmonica. And he, as we mentioned, he was from Clarksdale, worked as a sharecropper. But his influence is, like, incalculable. Like, his influence on rock and roll, for specifics, he had a song called, in 1950, 1950s is really when his hits started popping. Because, like we said earlier, recording stopped for a period. I mean, he was born in 1913, I think. Okay. Yeah. So, recording stopped for a period. You know, who knows how long it took him to get up to Chicago to get his record deal. You know, he signed his first record deal with Columbia Records. So, all of that takes time. So, when you say 1950, I feel like he's been making hits long before that. But for our records, he had hits in the 1950s, and he had one in 1950 called Rolling Stone. Okay. Which then led to the British band The Rolling Stones naming their band after his song.
Wow. That's literally where they got their name.
Literally.
Wow.
From his 1950 hit, yeah. Jimi Hendrix recalled that the first guitar player he was aware of was Muddy Waters.
That's huge.
I know. And I'm just talking about rock and roll examples. Yeah. Because I feel like that's some of the ones that touch the closest to, you know, like music I listen to. One of Led Zeppelin's biggest hits, called Whole Lotta Love, is based on the Muddy Waters hit You Need Love.
Wow.
Yeah, and it just kind of goes on and on. Following Muddy Waters' death, B.B. King actually told Guitar World magazine it's going to be years and years before most people realize how greatly he contributed to American music.
Wow.
And I think that it is. I mean, even us kind of digging this up and talking about it here, I'm like, okay, I wasn't familiar with Muddy Waters, but I'm familiar with everything that he has influenced and touched. And so I do think that quote is right on, BB.
Well, it's interesting because, you know, I don't know how people measure things like this. So I'm going to tell you, in my research, I came across this quote that said that the Delta blues is considered one of the only indigenous music genres of our country.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how you could measure that, because I think about, like, the Native Americans. You know, they had music styles of drums and stuff like that. So that would be one as well. Yeah. I mean, there's got to be others. But I'm just saying, this is a very important music style of our country.
Yeah, that came from here. Thrived here, spread here. Yeah.
Literally birthed here.
That's interesting.
So I think that's huge. But also, you know that little field guide that you gave me about the American South?
So good.
So good.
I'll put a link to that up in the show notes, because it's a good gift or a good reference book to keep on hand. Yeah.
It has a little, under their road trip section.
Oh, yeah.
There's one of Memphis and the Delta. And so it gives lots of details on that little road trip, and it is a 3-day road trip.
Okay.
Where you see Memphis, Clarksdale, and Greenwood, Mississippi, and Jackson, Mississippi. But I was just going to mention here on the Clarksdale section, in case somebody is going to make that trip, that it mentions, you know, driving that Highway 61, going to the Highway 61 Blues Museum.
Yeah.
And then there's a club called Red's Lounge. there in Clarksdale. And I also remembered that was one of, in this Garden and Gun Southerner's Handbook that I have.
Also a good reference book. I'll put it in the show notes. Great gift, great reference book.
It has 5 essential venues that you need to hit to get a nice, rounded out
so any music genre. Yeah.
Of Southern music. And in the top 5, it has this Red's Lounge in Clarksdale, Mississippi. So I just wanted to...
That's cool.
Yeah, you need to hit that. And it's up there with the Ryman, the 40 Watt Club. You know, it's like 5 essential ones, and Red's Lounge is in there.
That's good. That's a big deal.
Wanted to mention that. And it also mentions, places to eat and stay and all of that. So if you want to make the
field
trip,
guide.
Check out the field guide.
Yeah.
I won't give all those details. But
so that's a 3-day trip. And that's a good amount of time.
That's hitting Memphis and 3 cities in Mississippi. That's a great trip.
I feel like a lot of people are oftentimes looking for that amount of time.
What would be
They can't commit to a week, and they need more than a day trip. So... That's a great idea.
Yeah. I like these road trips they mention in there. There's some great ideas.
That's actually, all of those cities are a part of an even wider triangle that we're going to probably talk about on
a later episode.
Yeah. The Americana Music Triangle, or they also call it following the Golden Record Road.
Okay.
So that's like Nashville, Memphis, down even to New Orleans. It's a large triangle.
So that's hitting jazz, blues, early rock.
Yes.
Okay.
So the reason that is so important is there were this tiny triangle that 9 distinct genres of music came from.
Wow.
9. Blues, jazz, country, rock and roll, R&B, gospel, Southern gospel, and Cajun. And bluegrass.
Whoa.
Yeah. So
bluegrass, I would say, might have to go a little bit further east.
I know,
but I see what they're saying. Like all of that is representative in that triangle. That's pretty amazing.
That's wild to think about. And so Clarksdale's in the mix of that. And
I would say that the river has to do with it because look how it runs. You know how we were just talking about transportation. So you've got the Mississippi running where things can get from Memphis to New Orleans and.
Yeah.
All of that makes a big difference.
And part of that is the Natchez Trace Parkway, which is just a pretty drive.
Oh, my goodness. So that could be a whole episode as well.
Actually could.
Well, I wanted to mention a couple of organizations that I came across that I thought were cool.
Good time to do that. That's great.
So we have a really good friend and neighbor who is on the board for an organization called the Pinetop Perkins Foundation.
Okay.
And we can maybe put a link to that as well. But it is an organization that is trying to keep the blues alive through helping young people who are showing some interest or talent in some of these, piano, harmonica, bass, some of the different, guitar.
Preserving Southern traditions.
That's right. Exactly what we want to see happen. So the Pinetop Perkins Foundation does workshops to really help these young people learn furthering their skills.
That's so cool.
And because of the area, there's a lot of poverty.
Yeah.
So they don't get to just go take bass lessons or harmonica lessons. So they help in doing workshops.
Financial assistance makes a difference.
So I love that they're doing that.
That's cool.
And actually our neighbor, we asked him because he's on that board. He's very knowledgeable about the blues. He's going to do a top 20 must listen to Delta Blues playlist.
Sweet.
For us, for people who might want to kind of just see what this is all about.
All right. Serve them up a platter.
That's right. So
that's awesome.
Yet another reason you need to follow our social media.
We'll put that on our Instagram and Facebook links to find that.
Yeah, so we'll have that. And then another organization that I came across that I wanted to mention is actually out of North Carolina, and it's called the Music Maker Relief Foundation. They had a great just 4-minute overview video that I watched on YouTube.
Okay.
But they do mostly helping elderly
other extreme
artists, but trying to preserve, their giftings by helping them with gigs, music management.
Oh, okay.
Like, these people, they said many of them make between $10,000 and $18,000 a year.
Oh my gosh!
So they have no money.
They're not marketing themselves and pitching
or
themselves.
Even may not even know how to do
They're
that.
Not on emails, sending out notes to get a gig. Yeah.
So again, here's where this poverty is affecting the future.
Yes.
It's affected all along.
Yeah.
This getting going.
Yeah.
And so I love that we have the Pinetop Perkins Foundation that's trying to get the young people.
Lady. Yeah.
And then this Music Maker Relief Foundation that's trying to help the elderly. So we keep this alive.
We have to do that. That's
Isn't that
right.
Awesome? So
I'm definitely linking to both of those.
Yeah. And if you feel so led to donate to those or whatever, I love that they are doing that.
That's cool.
Also came across the 42nd annual Mississippi Delta Blues and Heritage Festival.
What? When's that?
That is Saturday, September 21st in Greenville, Mississippi.
Okay.
So that would even be a cool time to go visit Clarksdale. Maybe hit those on a Friday.
Yes.
Go to the festival on Saturday and make your drive home on Sunday. It'd be a great weekend.
Yes, it would.
And then if you're in the car and want to listen to some blues on the road trip.
Heck yeah.
I know Spotify and Pandora both have Delta Blues radio stations. Yep. And I don't have Sirius XM, but BB King Bluesville is a station.
Oh, cool.
On Sirius XM. So road trip waiting to happen.
That's right. Stay in theme the whole time if you're going down, I think.
Get your Coke and peanuts.
Get your Coke and
we talked about on our sodas episode.
But also, if you're in a really good mood, maybe listen to something else before taking it down, because it does kind of dip.
It does drag you down.
It might take a dip emotionally, but then I'm sure there's some blues songs that'll
I have to tell you,
back
though,
up.
I went through a blues phase of listening to the blues when I lived in Atlanta.
You did?
With Leslie.
Yeah.
And we had a club walkable from our apartment that was so great.
Was it a blues club?
It was called Blues Harbor.
Okay.
And it was true blues music. Not like a place where all the hipsters were hanging out. Like this was... but it was so fun, and this
would have been in the 90s.
In the 90s, we occasionally interacted with some of the artists and talked to them and different things like that. And
that's cool.
So that was a great place. And Atlanta has a couple other blues clubs that are still going. That were going then. Blind Willie's and Northside Tavern are two blues clubs that are still up and running. So
that's cool.
Very, like you said, can be kind of because it's birthed out of hardship, kind of a depressing music to listen to.
Yeah.
But it's certainly important and integral in shaping music that we
tells
listen
a story.
To. That's right.
And if you're a lover of Led Zeppelin, listen to "You Need Love" by Muddy Waters and figure out how they came up with
Whole Lot of Love. Whole Lot of Love was born. Gosh, I love Led Zeppelin.
I could hear it. I mean, I haven't even compared the two, but I can totally see that.
So I want to mention an up-and-comer in the blues world. Actually, he's already getting quite renowned.
Okay.
In case people want to check out one of the young ones that are up and coming. He goes by the name Kingfish.
Oh, I've heard that name.
Okay, Ingram is his last name.
Okay.
So anyway, he has played here in Franklin at Kimbrough's.
Cool.
But he basically was considered a child prodigy.
So he's still really
playing
young.
Really, from a very young age.
Okay.
I think he's now just turned 20.
Whoa.
But ridiculous talent.
Okay.
Like that true blues guitar of there was just those long guitar, instrumentals and... check out Kingfish Ingram if you want to, hear kind of one of the youth that are tackling this genre of music.
He sounds just like these guys that were playing at 17 that were killing it already at a young age.
So
awesome.
Check him out. I would be remiss not to mention one of the big names right now.
Yeah, that's
Check
good.
him out.
Well, that is your brief overview on Delta Blues.
On the Delta Blues.
We hope we did it justice, and we do hope that we are playing one little bit of a part in preserving and telling the stories and making sure that Delta Blues lives on in the South.
That's right. I might go listen to some Bessie Smith because I want to see what that female did for music.
Yeah. I haven't listened to her before, so that would be a good one. All right, y'all. Make it a good week, and we'll see you back here next time.
Bye, y'all.